Good evening, hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha television. This is Big Picture and I am Vishal Dahiya. Today we will discuss the issue of how the right-wing party BJP, in addition to being the single largest party in Lok Sabha, has now extended its lead over the Congress as well, and the gap is widening. In the recently concluded elections for 59 seats in Rajya Sabha, the BJP consolidated its position as the single largest party in the upper house, holding 69 seats. At present, the BJP had gone past the Congress's last August itself. But now the ruling party has managed to sizably widen the gap. The ruling alliance NDA has also overtaken the UPA in terms of numbers in the upper house. The BJP stormed to power in 2014 general elections in a watershed election victory with 282 seats. It was party's best performance by far and the first time in 3 decades that any single party secured a simple majority on its own. The BJP has never had it so good when it comes to numbers in both houses. So what does this march of the right-wing party mean for Parliament, and how does it is going to affect the scenario, the political as well as electoral, in the days to come? And how did this happen over the years? For a detailed discussion on this, we are joined by a distinguished panel of guests. Let me introduce them to you, starting with Ms. Aditi Phadnis, political editor of the Business Standard. We also have with us Mr. Sunil Chawake, the senior assistant editor of Maharashtra Times, and Mr. K. Badrinath, the editor policy from Financial Chronicle. And we are also joined by Mr. Tarun Vijay, senior leader of the BJP and a former member of the upper house. So welcome all of you to Rajya Sabha television. Let me begin with you, Ms. Phadnis, straight away. This is something which has happened over the years, and this is the first time actually BJP became the single largest party in August 2007. But it was after a gap of 65 long years that a party other than the Congress has become the single largest party in the upper house. So how did it all happen?
Well, 65 years, I don't know. I'm open to contradiction, but I think the Congress had a majority towards the fag end of Rajiv Gandhi's first term.
Yeah, but it still remained the single largest party all through these years.
Now, we were expecting this development to take place a little later. It has happened sooner than we expected. And that is because, of course, it's quite clear the BJP has done very well in the state elections, and therefore Rajya Sabha is the house of the states, and therefore that is reflected in the Rajya Sabha. But the interesting thing is, we are talking about Parliament, and it's interesting that the BJP has slid from 274 to 272 in the Lok Sabha, but has actually increased in the Rajya Sabha.
In the upper house.
We can discuss, of course, what the implications of this are. Will things become easier or more difficult for the BJP? Will we see a more edge in the opposition, more shrillness in the opposition voice, given that it now has to fight back?
We'll come to this part later in the discussion, but the first question which I have is, how did it happen? Was it the party's structure, or was it happening over the years, or is it the Modi factor which has been talked about in all electoral victories so long so forth, that this is the man on whose shoulders the BJP has been riding to power in every election? So has this also transformed literally into Rajya Sabha as well, because ultimately it is the Council of States?
Well, yes. I think more important is the fact that they have managed to win many elections in the states, which they were not in a position to win earlier. And because Rajya Sabha is elected in proportion to the MLAs and MLCs in the states, every MP has got more weight now from the BJP than he had previously. So naturally, it's a reflection how many states you win and how many states how many MLAs you win is crucial in determining the strength of the Rajya Sabha. Previously, because of anti-incumbency, central governments, ruling party governments used to lose in the assembly elections. We may see a bout of losses for the BJP in the upcoming elections, but at the moment they are sitting pretty, I think.
Sitting pretty at the moment. Let me bring in Sunil Chawake on this. Sunil, what's your interpretation of this entire situation? BJP being the single largest party, and the difference which it has with vis-a-vis the Congress is going to increase further. If you look at the future by-elections or biennial elections for the upper house. So how did it happen? Where do you feel the responsibility of this entire situation lies? With the party apparatus, with the party president, or is it again the same question, a Modi factor has worked a lot?
Definitely Modi factor, because this is the first time that after 2002-2004, when Congress and BJP was tied at 64 each in the upper house, this is the first time BJP has gained a lead of sizable lead and left behind Congress party. So, and during the 2004 to 2014, there was a decline of BJP overall in states and Lok Sabha election. But after the with the advent of Narendra Modi, BJP gained momentum and won so many elections, 9 states out of 13 in the last 3.5 years. And that reflected in the number. So, right now, out of 4,120 MLAs, BJP is having more than 1/3 MLAs. So, that strength is reflected exactly 1/3, nearly 1/3.
Okay.
You can say that strength is reflected in the upper house.
Okay. Let me bring in Mr. Badrinath, and then we'll go to Mr. Tarun Vijay as well. Mr. Badrinath, my question to you is slightly different than what exactly we are, putting here. Both our panelists are put in here. As far as, if you look at region-wise distribution of the BJP's victories and the BJP's presence, if you look at the southern India, then it is yet to go ahead and make that, impact in the southern states. Although it was in power in Karnataka, it is itching to come back to power in these assembly elections, the forthcoming assembly elections. And in Andhra Pradesh also, we saw how during the assembly elections, it was, the 3-4% which BJP had was the crucial one for Chandrababu Naidu also to come back to power. But why is it that the kind of impact which BJP or Narendra Modi has in the northern India or in the eastern India or western belt is not that significant in terms of electoral victories in southern India?
See, historically, BJP was seen as a cowbelt party. And the appeal the north it had did not have in the south. And either the Dravidian parties or the regional parties had, to an extent, some sway over the electorate. Secondly, when you go to Kerala, it was the left parties which had a little bit of impact on the electorate. Third, after the, then Chief Minister, Mr. N.T. Ramarao, who was a matinee figure, or a cinema figure, who came into politics, that the non-Congress combinations in Andhra Pradesh took root. That is the combined state that I am talking about, before the bifurcation. So, there are several factors historically, otherwise also, either the Dravidian parties in Tamil Nadu or the Congress which held a sway in Andhra Pradesh for several years. And for more than 50 years, Congress held the power in the state. In Kerala, it was alternating between either the left parties or the Congress. But today, my guess is what is happening across the country, there is every chance that the party is likely to make some kind of a dent in the southern states as well. For 1 or 2 terms, the BJP held power in Karnataka.
Yes, it did.
And because of the internal differences or the implosion within the party, I guess they had to lose power to Congress again.
Okay.
But in the case of other states, even in Andhra Pradesh, after the split with Chandrababu Naidu, my guess is that the party will have no strings attached, and perhaps it will have a larger field to play upon, and henceforth perhaps they will build their own electoral base there.
Okay.
In the case of Kerala and other places, if you recall, in the scheme of BJP at least, whatever has little I have known about is that they have a lot of focus on Kerala as well. Tamil Nadu, you have maybe if you call them, they may not be partly, they may not be alliance partners in NDA, but definitely they are not antagonistic towards NDA or against Mr. Narendra Modi.
So the efforts are ongoing as far as BJP and the southern states are concerned. Let me bring in Mr. Tarun Vijay here. Mr. Vijay, we'll start with the first and the foremost question, and that is, where do you attribute this particular success, both in terms of electoral victories, not only the states and the Lok Sabha elections, but also to the recent surge in the numbers in the upper house as well?
Definitely to the indefatigable dynamism and leadership of Mr. Narendra Modi and Mr. Amit Shah, with such a great focused attention on the micro level workers, booth level organizational structure, which no other party has even thought about it. No party can even say that they would have workers up to the booth level, and then on the day of the polling they will be able to mobilize maximum number of voters to vote. And secondly, appeal to the youngsters. More than 30 million such new voters. Out of that, about 20 million new voters were attracted by the charm of Mr. Narendra Modi's development plan. BJP stood very clearly, unapologetically, speaking for the soul of civilizational India and the future progressive development infrastructure for the country. That appealed everyone. Because all these years we had seen that the people, these seculars, so-called seculars and other left plus Congress and other parties, they were collectively opposing BJP, and they agreed, they approved, even if the most corrupt person comes to power, if Lalu is there or Akhilesh is there, Mayawati is there, that was acceptable to them, but not BJP, because they were afraid of the BJP's civilizational core values and the development plan. And they try to create a very artificial fear around BJP that they are anti-minority, they are bullock cart age people, they are anti-women, and if they come, they will be go to war with Pakistan, something like that. And even up to the extent that they demonstrated in a foreign country like America, and there were people who testified in the American Senate against their country, against their country's leaders, so that they gain some vote bank. For them, the country or the country's progress or corruption-free India was not the focus. The focus is only, number one, to keep BJP out of the main principal stream of political dialogue, and secondly, to keep their shackles on the power. That has been completely demolished.
That's what you're pointing out, towards the journey to the place where the party has reached so far. But one question which again comes to the fore, and is one of our panelists was also pointing out, that how long will this stay? As in, how long will this state wherein BJP will remain the #1 party in both houses will stay? There are going to be chances wherein the BJP will have to fight the anti-incumbency as well. And there may be several other demographic and geopolitical regions. So what is your, picture here? As in, how long do you believe your party will be able to maintain this hegemony in both houses?
Till we have honesty and transparency, and we work humbly without arrogance. We must take the lessons from other parties who were defeated by the people. Ultimately, it's a supreme power of the people's democratic strength that makes or unmakes. So that has to be kept in the mind. Till Amit Shah and Narendra Modi, they remain the engines of this victory chariot,
Okay.
I think the people of India are deeply impressed and they see a great future for the country, because what they see in the opposition is nothing, no vision, no ideas, no agendas, and every single party except BJP has turned into a sort of a family fiefdom. There is no internal democracy, and that's a very unfortunate condition for the Indian democratic system.
Okay.
Not a single party we see which has an internal democracy. Either chacha, tau, bhatija, mama, mami, bahurani, and pota, poti, and brothers. It is all that they have as a democratic setup in their party.
Okay, Tarunji, we'll come back to you again on a different aspect. Let me bring in Aditi here. Aditi, the same thing which Tarunji was responding to, the point which you raised in your initial response. So how long will this stay? And when we talk about, the situations, be it demographic or geopolitical, because there were a few issues with which the party started on its journey. They would, youth voters, the young voters, spoke about development, corruption-free government, something which Tarunji was pointing out. But what are the factors which you believe in the long run which might stop this juggernaut of the BJP?
Well, I don't see anything being stopped. There are possibilities that BJP has reached its peak in many states. It cannot go further than that, and it may drop some seats. But I'm not seeing a dramatic end of the BJP juggernaut. I'm not seeing it. Yes, the opposition may gain from the seats that that the BJP drops, particularly in Rajasthan, for instance, where I think internally even the BJP has given up and is expecting to lose the state. Madhya Pradesh could be touch and go, although Tarunji is here and he knows better about Madhya Pradesh. Similarly, Karnataka, I don't know if the BJP is going to manage to improve its vote share and therefore its seats. But these are all things which which come and go. So
pretty much, it's going to be it's going to be as good as for the BJP for
maybe
little
not
longer
as good,
well.
maybe not as good, but certainly it seems to be in BJP's favor generally.
Okay. Another important aspect, and I'll bring Sunil on that. Sunil, with that much numbers, both in Parliament as well as in many state assemblies, gives any political party an edge to go ahead and take decisive, give a decisive direction on several issues or take tough decisions. And you cover Maharashtra, specifically the agrarian crisis is one issue. So issues like agrarian crisis and other related issues, do you believe that now BJP has that wherewithal, has that elbow room to go ahead and take those tough decisions as and when required?
They have already taken tough decisions and they are taking tough decisions, as you see. In Maharashtra, agrarian problem is very deep-rooted, and they are trying their best to solve this age-old problem. They have announced loan waiver, they are implementing it, but still Maharashtra is a different, will present a different scenario next election, both in Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha, because opposition parties along with Shiv Sena, they are trying to corner BJP, and that will be a big handicap for BJP, because losing Shiv Sena in crucial election like Lok Sabha election, it will be very difficult for BJP to retain its number, and along with the numbers they have got as NDA, because last time they won 42 seats out of 48, and now with Shiv Sena against them, it looks very difficult for BJP to repeat the numbers.
The same performance in Maharashtra. Mr. Badrinath, what about the economic issues? And as Sunil was pointing out, tough decisions have been taken. There were several tough decisions which were taken by the Prime Minister in the past 3.5 to 4 years. But from here onwards, when the numbers are pretty comfortable in the upper house as well, will it be easier for the ruling party to go ahead and pursue those tough decisions, specifically in economic reforms, with an economic reforms angle?
See, as you know, economic reforms is a continuing process. But there were several bills that were stalled in the upper house because of lack of numbers. But a lot of consensus or backroom maneuvering helped the government to pass through crucial bills like GST and things like that. But my guess is they will have a little more flexibility in terms of managing the upper house because of the numbers. And UPA, at least by definition and also today by numbers, it's dwindling. And we do not see very much difference in the structure of the upper house in the very near future.
Okay.
Now that you have about more than 22 states in the NDA grouping, and most of them are BJP ruled states.
Okay.
So if that is the case, the best of the reform programs can happen now. But the biggest constraint here, though you have the large numbers as well as a large number of state governments in your fold, the biggest issue is in less than 1 year you have to go to polls. So can we do the bold reform program that the BJP has talked about in its last manifesto or not is a big question mark.
Okay. Aditi, before we go to Tarun, this important aspect that, is it advantage BJP as far as the entire floor strategy within the House is concerned now with larger numbers? They'll be able to build consensus a little more. They'll be able to go ahead and bring other smaller parties on board on several crucial issues.
The thing is that with this kind of a majority, the motivation to be, to reach out and to be humble is less.
Okay.
You know you can do it on your own. So why bother to go out and talk to anybody and build bridges? Also, the opposition tends to feel cornered and tends to then raise up the ante, as we have seen in this session and also previously. So, to the question whether the majority in the Rajya Sabha is going to help the BJP or hinder the BJP, it will require a lot of diplomacy and a lot of humility to get over this problem.
Okay.
I don't think the opposition is going to be in a mood to let anything pass without a struggle.
Without a struggle for the BJP.
Yeah. And so we have to see now what happens, because I am not very hopeful that any major legislation, economic legislation, is going to go through that easily.
Okay. We're running short of time, but let's take a quick comment from Mr. Tarun Vijay on this particular aspect. Mr. Vijay, as our panelists are pointing out that as the numbers grow for a particular party, the humility quotient comes down a little bit, and that urge or the need to take along its allies also, is not that prevalent. And that is quite evident in the kind of strain which is there in Shiv Sena BJP relations. So do you believe that that is one area where BJP needs to improve a little bit?
No, that's a loaded question, but I do agree with Aditi that there is certainly a danger of being self-righteous and arrogant, and that will be a really sad story. But so far, BJP has kept its humility level quite appreciable, acceptable, and they are reaching out to everyone. They are reaching out to so far untouched areas also. And one thing I just want to emphasize, that these days the foreign policy success is directly connected with the success of your domestic policy. The more FDIs, the more investments you get, the more infrastructure is built, the more employment is generated, the more youngsters' dreams are realized. So at that level also, the Modi government has created a fantastic impression on the minds of the young people. This is one factor. And secondly, it's very auspicious that in Rajya Sabha, BJP is gaining more strength, and the more, I think opposition will have to change its strategy. The more they have a kind of a fancy dress shows or noises coming into the veil, and all these things do not impress people at all. They have to prove, and they have to prove to their constituents and their electorate that they are very serious, sincere to represent the people's mandate in the Rajya Sabha and in Lok Sabha. That has to be done, otherwise it's the BJP all over, and I can assure you that Karnataka BJP shall definitely win. And in other states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala also, BJP is gaining a lot of approval from even segments which were considered anti-BJP or not closer to BJP, and Nagaland and Meghalaya, Tripura, they have proved that people want, people are hungry for development, people are hungry to have a very honest and transparent and corruption-free government, and that's what they want, and every party has so far deceived them. So that is the credibility quotient of Mr. Modi is highest today, highest. Whatever you say about small things, or you are happy or happy because of on certain policies, but when it comes to Modi and when Modi speaks to them, they trust him. That is the most phenomenal factor in today's politics, and that trust for Modi and trust in his vision in translating the dreams of the people into reality is certainly going to make a big impact in the coming elections. I am sure that if 21 after 29 are now saffron, we will certainly see entire southern as a saffron area, and that will be some point when Modi will need to rule another 10 years to change the system. India needs a systemic change. India needs a change in bureaucracy, judiciary, police reform.
Okay, Mr. Vijay. So that is all in today's discussion. We thank all the guests who have been joining us on this particular discussion in last half an hour. So for the BJP, while they have a majority in the lower house and they are now the single largest party in upper house, does give them an edge over the opposition. The future times are not going to be easy for them, as they will have to go ahead and fulfill the promises and live up to the aspirations of the people. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different set of guests and different topic. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.